my pleasure to introduce Ross Martin, president of Known. Ross is a rare kind of leader in marketing, one who sits at the intersection of data, creativity, and culture. At Known, he helps lead a modern marketing company built on a foundation of advanced analytics and data science, powering strategy and creative work for some of the world's most innovative brands. Before Known, Ross spent over a decade at Viacom, where he led global marketing strategy, insights, innovation, and creative teams across brands like MTV, Comedy Central, and Nickelodeon, shaping some of the most culturally relevant work in media. His work spans far beyond traditional marketing. As an executive producer across film, television, and podcasts, a venture investor, a published poet, and an active contributor to philanthropic and industry leadership initiatives. He's been recognized by Fast Company as one of the 100 most creative people in business, named to Fortune's 40 Under 40, and honored as one of Adweek's 50 most indispensable executives in advertising. A reflection of both his creative impact and his ability to drive real business growth. Ross brings a perspective that challenges conventions and pushes boundaries, thinking differently about how ideas are created, applied, and scaled. Please join me in welcoming Ross Martin.
Thank you, Ray. That was really nice. There's so much Yale water up here. It's like smart water, but smarter than the smart water. This is it's so good to be back. How was lunch? Did you like lunch? The turkey was really good, but they didn't have that last time I was here. I wanted to prove to you that AI did not do this presentation. I did it. So we have an amazing global design team, and they would kill me for showing you this. But, and if they're watching on YouTube or whatever, I'm sorry, but I did this. This was just all me. And clearly they would say I did it wrong. So that is actually the title of my talk, which is Why and How to Do Things Wrong. We treasure new ideas because they might mean that we've invented something entirely original. And yet, why is it that some of our most inspiring work is often born of misunderstanding and misuse, large and small, of what was heretofore already known? How is it that some of our most compelling inventions, solutions, innovations sometimes emerge from accidents, unexpected permutations, radical distortions, and deliberate perversions? Why is it that sometimes, this podium is like shaky? It's a little bit like not centered. Can I borrow something from you? I just need something to put under the podium. So it's a little shaky. I can have your phone? You crazy? All right, I'll use your phone to do it. Thanks. So, let me just see if I can. Yeah, perfect. Great, hope you don't need your phone back. When we have a problem, why is it that we can find something that's totally unintended for that, and suddenly it becomes exactly what we needed, a wonderful solution to my shaky podium problem here? That's much better. So how is it that blatant misuse and misappropriation of systems, platforms, tools, even brands can solve problems and generate new possibilities that we never imagined? If we only use things the way they're supposed to be used, we never would have gotten this. Ready-made, Duchamp. Or more recently, Maurizio Catalan's golden toilet. This actually sold for $12 million to Ripley's Believe It or Not after it was offered as a provocative reproachment to President Trump in his first term by the global chief curator of the Guggenheim. Or more practically speaking, if we only used things the way they're meant to be used, we'd probably never have gotten Kachustard, Sporks, or Turducken. when we use things in ways that they weren't originally intended, we free our minds to create without limitation. And sometimes the output can be completely impractical, like this. This is from the Museum of Flops in France. That did not work. Neither did this. That didn't work. It's disgusting. I hope there's no one here from Colgate-Palmolive. But sometimes the output can be so deeply, unexpectedly glorious. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the bacon alarm clock. Sometimes when you do things wrong, it can be funny. Like when this guy turned a carrot into a working clarinet. Sometimes when you do things wrong, it looks really silly. This is Rick Barry. He's shooting a free throw underhand. He made that shot famous. Then other NBA players started calling it the granny shot. It was so embarrassing that the worst free throw shooter in the league, Shaquille O'Neal, actually said, "I'd rather shoot 0% than shoot like that." But it works. Rick Barry shot 91% from the free throw line. Sometimes you can use things wrong and it can get you out of a jam. Who remembers MacGyver? This guy did more with toothpaste and scotch tape and garden hoses than I could do with anything. Remember the first few weeks of the pandemic? We had just a little bit left in our fridge. We couldn't go shopping for weeks. And we just started combining the stuff we had in our fridge in new ways. And that kind of thinking is how chocolate got into peanut butter and peanut butter got into chocolate, and we got Reese's peanut butter cups long ago. Ever wonder how we got Doritos? Well, Doritos happened when food service workers at Disneyland, didn't want to throw out all the uneaten tortillas. So they took them back inside, they fried them, they seasoned them, and they tasted amazing, and we got Doritos. Sometimes you can create something new, or you can try to create something new, over and over again, and you keep getting it wrong until you finally get it right, but in a totally different way than you intended. For example, today we use WD-40 as an all-purpose lubricant, but it wasn't originally intended for that. It was intended to coat Atlas missiles, and after 39 attempts to get it right, on the 40th try, they yielded a consumer product that you'll find in most homes today, WD-40, which stands for Water Displacement 40th Try. Sometimes the impact can be more serious and more consequential, like when the FDA approved the use of birth control pills to treat acne. The FDA has a whole set of protocols for doing this. That's how a heart medication became a treatment for erectile dysfunction. It's how a drug that was originally designed to help manage enlarged prostates and treat high blood pressure became the #1 medicine for something totally different. I'm talking, of course, about Propecia. Why are you laughing at my head? Sometimes the consequences of using something in a new way can create new challenges that we didn't anticipate. When a diabetes drug became the #1 way to control weight gain, that also became the #1 problem and threat to the restaurant business, the alcohol industry, and the snack category. I'm talking, of course, about GLP-1s. Sometimes doing things the wrong way can protect us. Like, it would be weird to go to a bar and stir your cocktail with your finger. That would be weird. But this nail polish doubles as an early detection system for rape drugs. The idea was that if your drink had been tampered with and you stirred it, your fingernails would change color. Sometimes we can pretend to use things the right way and fool everyone around us. This is Kobe Bryant. You think, just like his teammates think, that he's listening to music. He's not listening to music. There's nothing playing in his headphones. He did this all the time so that he could hear his teammates talking shit about him, which he used as motivation. So today I'm going to share some real-world examples across marketing, media, technology that demonstrate how constraints, curiosity, accidents, cross-disciplinary audacity can capture attention, unlock value, and sometimes even reconfigure meaning itself. All right, let me begin by saying there are a lot of things that we should obviously not use wrong. Building ships, don't want to do that wrong. Treating patients, don't want to do that wrong. Putting together IKEA chairs, don't want to do that wrong. I have sucked at following directions my whole life. It's actually something that permeates everything I do. Math problems, science labs, even Legos, I mess them all up. Slightly misunderstanding the assignment has become part of my identity. Not following directions, landing somewhere just to the left or the right of where you're supposed to and where almost everybody else does. It's one reason that I decided not to go to law school, and instead I went to poetry school and I published a book of poems. And I became a poetry professor because I figured there are no rules when you're writing poems, except that there are a great many rules in poetry. In fact, the very best poets are the ones who know the rules and then break them in the exact right time in glorious ways. Shakespeare, for example, did not invent the sonnet. That was Giacomo de Lentini. But Shakespeare bends the sonnet's rules. He uses the form improperly, restructuring its 14 lines, as you remember from your English class, from a traditional octave and sestet, instead into 3 quatrains and a final couplet, often with a punchy, destabilizing ending. And instead of a neat pivot in the middle like you're supposed to do in a sonnet, Shakespeare saves the turn for the very end for that final couplet. And he uses the form of the sonnet just wrong enough to unlock new meaning. There's a particular thrill when a poem teaches you its rules and then just at the right moment violates them. That break isn't a mistake. It's actually where meaning gets created. Check out the pattern interruption in this poem here from Gwendolyn Brooks from 1960. We real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon. The poem teaches us to expect a we at the end of each line. But when the prospect of the players dying becomes reality, that's when the form breaks. Right at the end, there's no more we. The absence of the pronoun, the protagonist that it represents, is something that we feel. So, what are the conditions that make these kinds of creative misuses possible? What if you wanted to cultivate more of this behavior? What would you do? Well, it's constraints that often create the conditions for misuse. People rarely invent wrong uses in abundance. They do it when something isn't working, or when there are constraints, like when budgets are tight, when timelines compress, when the obvious path is blocked. The workaround becomes the idea. Or when the rules are so tight, they're practically begging to be broken. The emotional hurdle is permission. Quite often, it has nothing to do with whether it's possible, but whether we feel allowed to do it. Institutions, brands, even great universities are very, very good at teaching you the right way, much less so at legitimizing deviation and, God forbid, celebrating it. So the question is, who gives you permission to use things in ways that they weren't intended? You do. If you only use things the way they were intended, you inherit the limits of their design. Innovation is misuse that worked. Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations argues that meaning itself arises from how we use something. Our use of a word or a symbol or a brand in the world is what creates its meaning. And when we use things in new ways, in ways they weren't originally intended, we can create new meaning and new outcomes. So, how did I come to think like this? Let me tell you about the best musician that I have ever met. His name was Joe Morello. You might not know that name, but I think you know the music. So I memorized all of Morello's songs and all of his solos, but I had a hard time actually ever sounding like Joe Morello. Why? Well, it wasn't because I didn't have the same drums that he did. I had the exact same drums that he did, but I had 3 times as many because I felt having a bigger drum set as a teenager was cool. It was because he was somehow getting sounds out of his drums that I couldn't get out of mine. His tom-toms always seemed in tune with Dave Brubeck's piano or Paul Desmond's saxophone. He could bend the tone of each of his drums. His bass drum could go twice as fast as mine, and I had 2 bass drums. Joe Morello was getting sounds out of his drums that were uniquely his. He sounded like Joe Morello, and I simply couldn't figure out how to do it. So my teacher took me to see him perform. I was 14 years old. There I was, smoke-filled Manhattan jazz club, no legal right to be there, no parental permission to be there, late at night, and I'm watching him, and this time I'm in person, and I sat through the first set staring at everything he did, and I couldn't figure it out. But for the second set, that's when he invited me to sit behind him on stage. So I sat behind him on that stage, and my whole world changed, because now I could see what he was doing. I could see that he was using the drums in ways that I had no idea they could be used. Between each song, he was tuning his tom-toms exactly to the notes and the keys of the rest of the band. He was pushing his elbow into the drum head to create tension and bend the note on his drum. Then he snuck one of his drumsticks down by his, I'll do it over here, by his bass drum and did this, so it sounded like he had 2 bass drums. I could never have seen that by looking at him. No one had ever done that. He hit the sides of his drums. He used his fingers on the drum heads. He scraped his cymbals with the back of his brushes. All things you could never see unless you were right there behind him watching. Joe Morello used his drums in ways that nobody ever thought or tried before, and that did way more than give me permission to do the same. It inspired me to come up with new ways of not just using my drums and my hands, but my words, my ideas, my jobs, the companies I worked for, everything around me. It was the biggest unlock of my life. So one of my early jobs in media and entertainment was, as you heard, at MTV, which, trust me, for the people I'm looking at and your ages, that it was actually cool back then. Some of the older people my age would remember that. It was awesome because people were using TV in ways that TV was not meant to be used. In fact, it was using TV sometimes in ways that it wasn't technically allowed to be used. So how did MTV use TV wrong? Well, first by starting out as one big commercial in the form of music videos for the record industry. Then by introducing characters that weren't supposed to be allowed on TV, lest American children see Ozzy Osbourne and his family, or Jackass, or for the first time, LGBTQIA characters, and even by confusing what was scripted from what was reality. Even our sister network, Nickelodeon, understood the assignment. Their top-rated show was literally called You Can't Do That on Television. When I got to MTV, that was the expectation. My boss, the guy who greenlit Jackass, Beavis and Butthead, The Real World, Pimp My Ride, Celebrity Deathmatch, he called me into his office on my very first day, and he said, whatever you do, don't F it up. And what he meant was, do F it up. Use the platforms, the resources, the cultural capital to do it all even wronger. So we did. This is The Hills, remember it? I remember being in the room, there were 4 of us, where we were deciding on the series finale, the final scene of the mega hit series, The Hills. And we were debating whether to play it straight or end the show by admitting that it had been scripted all along. So we aired them both, 2 totally different endings, back to back. One that made you believe the whole show was real. And the next hour, basically another one that admitted it was entirely scripted. And that was something nobody had ever done before on TV. I wish Antonio, who worked at HP, were here for this one. One day, my computer was having problems. So our IT team came in from India remotely to my laptop and with my permission went through all my settings and fixed the problem. So I'm sitting there, you've probably been through this experience, and I'm watching, this is 20 plus years ago, I'm watching a stranger go through my computer and I'm realizing they could literally access anything that they want while I watch them do it. And I thought, this IT guy could go through any of my files right now, and that's really intimate, and I'm uncomfortable, and that's a way to find out a lot about me. So of course, we used that tension to create a reality show called Meet or Delete, which inspired us to take college students and in a dating game format, have them choose who they wanted to date based on 10 minutes of unfettered access remotely to their computers. Can you imagine if someone did that to you? That was a weird way to use TV. Okay, on a much more serious note, while I was at MTV, the first genocide of the 21st century in Darfur began. And although college students were the first in America to protest, we needed to find a way in the news cycle to disrupt and to raise more attention and more pressure and more funds to fight that genocide. So we did something that no one was expecting. We became the first to use a video game to fight genocide. Can you imagine doing this? We created a video game called Darfur is Dying to raise awareness, funds, and political pressure to fight the first genocide of the 21st century. Were people skeptical? Absolutely. Did we get in a lot of trouble? Yes, but also this happened. Mr. Bush, take a look at MTV. We put enormous pressure on pension funds and US representatives and senators and the president himself to affect change and get involved. So when I was at Paramount, I noticed we were massively over-depending on one thing for revenue, and you can imagine what it was, ratings. And though we were really, really good at making so many other things, we were so good at research and strategy. I was invited here, actually, to talk about research back then. We were so good at casting. We were so good at hiring young people. We were so good at design. We were so good at experiential, at making video games. But the only way we were making money was on ratings. That was it. So we took all those things that we were great at and we turned them into consulting services that brands could buy. Our first and biggest client was General Motors. Coming out of bankruptcy, GM came to us and said, well, you're really good at a bunch of things that we suck at. Can we pay you to do them? We turned our company inside out. We used MTV, Nickelodeon, and Comedy Central in ways they were not meant to be used. Can you imagine the accounting teams at MTV and Comedy Central when money's coming in to pay our HR people to consult for General Motors in Detroit on how to do a better job of attracting young people to work for GM? That didn't make any sense. That wasn't a way to do things. The next thing we did was we partnered with Dr. Pepper Snapple Group, took an equity stake in Sundrop, a soda that most people in the country had never heard of before, and launched their campaign as their agency. And the next, and probably my favorite thing, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We were launching their movie, their video game, and their merch. And what we did was we turned the lair, which anybody knows is where the turtles live, into an Airbnb. We didn't list it. Michelangelo listed it because the turtles had to go launch their movie and fight crime around the world. So their lair was going to be available. We put it on Airbnb. We didn't tell Airbnb we were going to do that. We just did it. It was a really beautiful lair to spec. And Airbnb called and said, what the hell are you guys doing? You can't do that. Now people do that with Airbnb all the time. You can use so many things in ways that they weren't intended. That's what I do at my agency, Known. So 2 months ago, our movie about the McDonald's All-American basketball game called Meal Ticket hit #3 on Amazon Prime Video. It's probably not #3 right now, but if all of you go today at like 7 o'clock at the exact same time, maybe you'll get us. It's like everybody flushing their toilet at the exact same time. So a journalist on the day of the launch interviewed me live, and he started with this question. He said, how does an ad agency make a movie that hits #3 on Amazon? And I said to him, well, how do you define an ad agency? And he said, well, it's kind of obvious, Ross. An ad agency is a company that makes ads for other companies. I'm like, no, I can't, no. If he's right, I'm totally doing it wrong. And therein lies the point. If we're doing agency wrong, maybe that's why we're Adweek's Agency of the Year this year. Maybe it's why we keep doing things like this, turning Steph Curry into a billboard shooting the moon. We can play.
Success may not always look the way you expect, but it's attainable for all of us when the rigor of our preparation meets the urgency of the moment. That's what
Not
it means
AI.
to be shot ready.
Or turning Dr. Seuss into a travel agency where books can take your imagination anywhere. Or turning Universal Music Group, the largest music company in the world, into a hotel in Madrid, coming soon to America too. And then coming later this summer, turning Universal Music Group's archives into a primetime series starring Fred Armisen, coming in August, I think, on CNN. So marketing might be one of the most fun and effective places to do things wrong. There's so many examples of marketers using things in ways that they weren't intended. Where else can you call something the wrong name and completely change its meaning? How we see it, how we talk about it, how we use it. Is that Chilean sea bass? Nope. It's originally called toothfish. Is that mahi-mahi? Nope. Hogfish. And is that uni? Nope. Whore's eggs. I didn't make it up, but you don't want to order whore's eggs at the restaurant. Marketing is where you can do things all wrong on purpose and rejuvenate sales, like when the agency Mischief and Coors Light mistakenly printed packaging that read, Mountain Cold Refreshment. They did it on purpose, then they blamed it on Mondays being so brutal, you need a beer. Or when Kentucky Fried Chicken ran out of drumsticks, and they messed up so bad, they had to admit it and apologize. Marketing is where you can catalytically convert the byproduct of one thing, in this case, the heat from a gaming console, into a heating mechanism for another, in this case, Pizza Hut pizza. That's a gaming console overheating and used to heat a pizza. That's crazy. Marketing is where you get to take your brand name off your product and instead put the word that defines the need state of the user who craves it. Marketing is where you get to use your competitor's product in the perfectly wrong way that just benefits you. Coke is okay. It tastes way better with Pepsi. Or decades ago, when Coke was massively outselling Pepsi, actually 2-to-1, and came back with this gem. It's so cold, it's so cold. He just leaves the 2 Coke cans right there. That's so mean, so mean. So where we market is also kind of incredible. You're not supposed to market or advertise inside the TSA bin at security, but Zappos did. You're definitely not supposed to market Girl Scout cookies, let alone sell them outside of a dispensary. But it worked. Every object, every system, every role, every brand, everything comes with an implied script. The way you do it, most people follow that script. A few rewrite it. The interesting question isn't just, Can it be used differently? But what new outcomes become possible when you do? When you understand something so deeply that you can bend it intelligently. The more defined a thing is, the more interesting it becomes to misuse. A rigid system, tightly wound, locks up energy. When we unlock that energy, we unleash creative potential. What about you yourselves? Your talents, your time alive, what were you meant to be used for? What were you meant to be used on? Are you doing it all right? Or are you doing it just wrong enough? Virgil Abloh teaches us using things in ways they weren't meant to be used is actually not as hard as we think. This is what he said in 2013 at Harvard, right after the subtle changes he made to Nike, which made him a legend. So I'm going to conclude today. This is a callback to the bacon alarm clock that you liked before. I'm going to conclude with bacon. Not bacon in a way that you can smell it or eat it. I'm going to show you how bacon can be used to create rain. So, bacon is rain. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.